So we're 90 days into our growth, into our enlargement, into our illumination, into growing the storehouse of God's wisdom, the treasury of His knowledge within us. Layer upon layer, day upon day, week after week, we're growing closer to the image of God's creative potential within us all. We become the storehouse. We become the storehouse of God's treasury of wisdom. 90 days in, that's Psalm 90. That means that we've entered the fourth book of Psalms, the Numbers Psalms, Psalms of our pilgrimage here upon the earth. And today we're going to be learning lessons in humility. The title reads, A Prayer of Moses, the Man of God. Not too long ago, the preacher, the pastor, used to be called a man of God. It was a way of honoring our dedication to ministry. If you were to go back to Augustine's time, we were called doctors. They would call the pastors or the priests or bishops, they would call them doctors. We were doctors of the soul. Here, today, we're rarely called doctors of the soul. That's given now to psychologists and psychiatrists, that kind of doctorate. Today, we're rarely called men of God because, we've just been getting things wrong so often that we're almost ashamed to carry that kind of title. But here in the title, it talks about Moses as being the man of God. Aaron wasn't called the man of God. Moses was called the man of God. Many who served God in Moses' time who weren't called the man of God. This was something that was given to Moses. One day, God explained the distinction to Aaron. He said, when a prophet of the Lord is among you, I reveal myself to him in visions. I speak to him in dreams, but this isn't true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Above and beyond the title, the anointing, the dedication, the gifts and callings, the dreams and visions and interpretations and hearing God's voice, there was a connection that enabled Moses to see God face to face. Connection is mysterious. When you really connect with somebody, something magical happens, something inexplicable. You can't explain it, but you know that it's there. You just have a connection. Part of our problem in being able to truly connect is that we treat God as a thing instead of a person. Part of the problem when we have trouble connecting with people, with our wives, with our husbands, with our children, is that we are treating them, or we're being treated as things and not genuinely as the person's other, the person's true other. When we treat God as a thing instead of a who, we objectify him. God becomes something abstract to us. In that, whenever we do that, we distance ourselves from him. So we end up studying him, studying about him. We have our doctrinal statements about God. We philosophize and we theologize about him. But these things never connect us to him. We treat people in the same way. we objectify them. We reduce our relationships with people to the level of something, a wife or a husband or a child or a pastor or a thing. Whenever we do that, it becomes impossible to really connect, and our relationships always suffer in the process. We may think we know a lot about a person, but we don't really connect with that person. In fact, many times the things that we know about them become a wall, a barrier between us and them. It's interesting to note that just prior to God's words with Aaron, the Spirit mentions, "Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth." Humility, like connection, is also difficult to define, but the result is always obvious. Proverbs 11 verse 2 says, "With pride comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom." Above all, humility listens. And this is the trouble that we have within the world. Nobody listens anymore. The man of God is the one who listens, really listens to God, to the degree that there is pride within us. We block our ears to God's voice, and we block our eyes to his form, and we make him into a thing. To the degree that you come to God in humility, you will be able to listen and hear his voice and see his face. When we truly connect in this way, we become a man or a woman of God. When we truly listen to our wives, we become their husband. And when our wives truly listen to the husband, they become wives to us. The same goes with our children. The same goes with pastors and their congregations. Truly being able to listen and hear, we can suddenly see things that we never saw before. So Psalm 90 provides us with lessons in this, with lessons in humility, lessons from Moses, the man of God. Just quickly now, 3 quick lessons from this psalm. There's other lessons here, but 3 quick lessons. It says in verse 1, "Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations." The first lesson in humility teaches us to become so comfortable in God's presence that we discover what it means when it says, "In him we live and move and have our being." Lord, you have become our dwelling place. You have become our dwelling place. Consider your dwelling place. Consider your home where you live. It's your safe place. It's your place of protection. It's your comfortable place. Home is where you raise your family. It's where you invest your energy and your finance and your time. It's where you do life. You keep it, you look after it, you upgrade your home and you add to it and you defend it, because your home is a reflection of yourself, a reflection of your personality and your character and your growth and your years of investment. The Psalm says that's how we should be in our relationship with God. Or as Jesus put it, "Abide in me, and I will abide in you." You've got to grow comfortable with living, with having Jesus around in your life. You've got to become comfortable with Jesus being there, of being in him and him being in you. He's family now. He's moved in. He's moved in, set up all his furniture. He's moved in. He's there for good. He's living now, and you're living in him. So you have to invest in him. You've got to invest your time and your money and your affection. You have to enter in. You can't just visit with God. You've got to enter in. So Moses grew so comfortable with God that his face glowed with God's presence. When you dwell with God, you can't hide it. It shows. People can see it in your face. I remember just after my dad had given his life to Jesus, that he was in a service station and he was filling up his tank with petrol, and somebody out of the blue just came over and spoke with him and said, "I can see Jesus in your eyes." Wow. You can tell when somebody has Jesus living in them and when they're living in him. That's the first lesson. Second lesson, verse 4, "For 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night." The second lesson in humility is getting into God's rhythm, into God's timing. Timing is the secret to life. You got to be at the right place at the right time. No point in being in the right place, but at the wrong time. You got to be there at the right time. So since Einstein, we've understood that time is relative to your position. God, who sits outside of time, can accomplish in one day or in one watch of the night, that's in any given hour, things that take thousands of years here upon the earth. It takes at least a year for grapes to turn water into wine, but at the wedding of Cana, Jesus accomplished that in an instant. People today, we're under so much pressure. We're in such a rush, rushing into relationships, rushing out of relationships, rushing into business, rushing through church, rushing here and there. But Moses had learned patience, the patience of the saints. And Moses is telling us we need to settle down and get into God's rhythm, into God's timing. And if we can do that, we'll accomplish much more in an hour than what others do in years when they're trying to make things happen. Just get into God's rhythm and into God's time. It takes humility to do that because we're in such a rush. And if God doesn't hurry up and do things in our time, well, we'll just try to make it happen a lot quicker than what God will do it. Yes. Third lesson, verse 12. "Teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Wow. Here's a lesson. The Psalms are all about wisdom. Teach us to number our days aright. Our third and final lesson is don't waste an opportunity. Every decision we make counts, for better or worse. It'll make you richer or poorer here and in the hereafter. So you need to live. You need to truly live. And that's a choice. Our attitude to life is a choice. Every decision that we make needs to be made in the light of eternity. Wisdom knows this. Foolishness lives in fantasy. I'll get serious one day. One day I'll follow Jesus. But God says, make your choice today, for you do not know what tomorrow brings. And so there we have 3 quick lessons of humility that will give us so much wisdom, wherein we will be able to make our lives richer and not poorer, stronger and not weaker, brighter and not dullerer. God bless you. We'll see you again tomorrow for some wisdom so that we can walk in wisdom.